Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday Conversation. I'm just going to talk about some things that have been on my mind and my heart over the last few days, been swirling around in there, and I thought I'd just put it out there for your contemplation. It says that God made man in his image. We are made in his image. If it wasn't in the Bible and somebody said that, you'd say that's blasphemy. We're like God? So it's an interesting concept. It's like we can't imagine somehow that we are made in his image. And what does that mean? Does it mean that we look like him? Or does it mean that we are imbued with his characteristics, his ability to imagine, create, free will? It's actually quite interesting that why did God want to create a creation in his own image? And what came to me was, how many of us have desired to have a family? Excuse me. And I'm probably going to get some kickback for this. But I believe that God wants us to understand him as much as he wants to understand us. Who wants to live alone and never, some people do because they've been hurt by others and they'd rather live on a mountain and never see anybody, okay? But for the most part, we are created to interact with other people and have companionship. And it's interesting how when he created Adam, he was alone with all the beasts and the earth and nature, everything. And he created him there by himself for a time. And then it says that they, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, I believe, decided it's not good for man to be alone. He needs to have a companion. And I can't help but wonder if God, who wanted to create beings in his image, if somehow it mirrors him. That of course he was everything. He has been and always will be. He's the I am. He didn't have to create anything. He could have just been just fine with no creations. But it must serve him. It must bring him joy to create. He created a kingdom for himself, angels, beings that I believe reflect his glory back to him. And it's if you want to say, a type of companionship it's almost like he's multiplying himself in different forms. And each creation reflects back to him some type of glory. Now you have man, who apparently is different than all the other creations. And Adam was created in God's image. And of course it says that Lucifer was jealous because he was the star of the show. He was the bright morning star angel who fell from grace. And then God created man, his special creation that would be so close to him, but not him, his children. And I couldn't help but think, that God wanted to have companionship and interaction with beings like him. Of course, not on the same level as him, but that would be so much like him that they could actually appreciate him even more. So God created a family. He created his own family. But yet, he's doing it through a process, in my opinion, through the fall, where we're not just like angels who really don't understand good and evil. And it says in the garden, he didn't want Adam and Eve really to taste good and evil. But I believe he knew ahead of time that they would not be able to restrain themselves. And that what could come out of that would be even greater, because man would be allowed to fall and to live a sort of a life that's separate from him, experience the negativity and the darkness, the loneliness of not being connected to him. We have all felt that. And of course, giving us a way back, his promise, his son to come and sacrifice so that we could be reunited. But what comes out of that, you can just see, is an explosion of gratitude from each person that has suffered and who will one day live in his presence. And it seems that this plan even multiplies even more the gratitude and the joy of not only us, but him who receives it. So that's what I've been thinking about. Why create us? And if we're made in his image, we have desires of having a family, having that family unit where love is what holds it together, the camaraderie and companionship. And so I just can't help but wonder, God gives us clues in the Bible about who he is. All kinds of little clues. And even with the prodigal son, he doesn't say the prodigal son comes home and he gets a really good tongue lashing and has to do this and that and is looked down upon by everyone. No, the father is overjoyed. He's overjoyed at the return of one who was lost. So he gives us clues about him. He wants us to understand his character because it's also who we are. We are made in his image. Although in a fallen state, I think we use only a very small percentage of our brains since the fall. So we're not in our full capacity at all of who we are meant to be. But the outline of it is inside of us.
I noticed if you have a pet, any kind of a pet, they will make you laugh. You see them and they make you happy. And if you have a pet, almost any pet, they're not going to outlive you. You're going to see them, many times as an infant and through an adult and then through old age, whether it's a dog or a cat or a bird or whatever. I think it's interesting that happens, that you see them through their full life. And then you often get another pet. But the idea is every time it's different. And the same with your children. As your children, each one of them is different in how they grow and how they change and everything. But they all bring you joy. So I think this is, again, it goes back to what you say, it's a reflection of life and how we can appreciate things.
I will add to that each one is given a gift. Everybody has their own gifts. And what are our gifts? Each gift is meant to glorify him. So ultimately, that's what it's for. Now, we use our gifts to glorify ourselves, usually in our young life. That's what we do. But ultimately, your gift is to glorify the Father. So think about the Father with all his children, with all these different gifts, and the symphony that comes back to him of all these different millions of gifts. I mean, it's almost unfathomable, yet you can kind of get it. I mean, when people say they visited heaven, the sounds of worship, of song, of just everything, the love that's reverberating in heaven all around is just everywhere. And I believe that each one of us, we don't realize he meant to make you for a reason. And, we think of having a little family of 2 or 3 or maybe 5 or 6 children or whatever. He's got billions, and each one is a joy to him. Now, there's obviously free will. When we're born of the flesh, but this life, we can choose between the benevolent Father, or we can choose to rebel and not accept him. And that is our choice. There really can't be love without free will. Has anybody been obligated to love before? It doesn't feel very good. You can't be willed to love. You can't be forced. You can't be manipulated to love. People can try, and they may get some sort of compliance, but it's not love. There's no love without free will.
We're not really choosing. I mean, I guess we can, but we're already born in sin, right? So we're already have that rebellious spirit in us. So we're not like originally choosing that, right?
Correct.
To me, it seems like the only choice I have is to choose to be saved, to want that more than anything. Because a lot of my life, some of my life, I lived as a selfish slob, and I didn't care. I just wanted to get some pleasure and hide and conserve whatever goodness I had, and maybe I could make it at the end, probably not, but I had to ask to be saved from that. Like every day when I'd meditate and pray, I'd say, please give me the wanting, because that's a scary place to be where you don't even care. I wanted to care, but I didn't, so he gave it to me, thank God.
Something in you wanted it. That's why you were asking for it, but it was so buried.
Yeah. Without hope, we're dead ducks.
Adam and Eve made that choice for us. The choice we have now is whether or not we want to become sons and daughters of him. He made us to be that. He's got gifts for us. He's got a purpose for us and a future for us. But we have to actually choose to leave sin behind to become a son or daughter of the Father. So he wants us to want him more than we want our sin.
Right. I think we keep forgetting the fact that originally we're not like any other creature on earth. Every other creature is programmed to be just what they are, whereas we have a choice to continue our state. We call it a fallen state. But Adam I think he knew. But God let him have that choice, let him see what would happen if he became his own God, like God, and he knew what it was. And unfortunately, there was a clause in that statement, you can't be God and have God. Two things cannot happen at one time. You have to be the original one, and I think that's where he screwed up.
The grass is always greener on the other side. Even for Adam and Eve, they had everything, but they thought, maybe out there's something more. But we had to be able to live the something more, which is really a whole lot less. When we're all done here, we will never want to go back. We will have lived it. Like I've said before, Adam and Eve didn't know what was on the other side. We do. The choice is for us to live in this world. We can wallow in the darkness all we want, but will we choose to leave it behind and actually become the son or daughter that we were created to be? And that is what Jesus Christ came to make the way. He is the way. Thank God, because Lucifer doesn't have a way back. He fell, and he doesn't have a way back. But how interesting that God created us in his image. He knew we would fall, but he made sure he made the way back for those that wanted to be a part of his family. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Anytime I had like words in my head or intellectual, like I talked to myself about God or the truth, I noticed that was actually the portal where all doubt about God existed. So I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but the whole thing of talking to ourselves, and I think that's very common. And when I pull back from that, I get to see reality and have no doubt about God at all. But that doubt exists in intellect. That's all. So it's always playing upon us, right? It's almost like when you exist in a place where you know nothing, that's where the understanding is. And you know. But in the head, the devil wants us to doubt that God even exists. That's what the whole communism ideal is all about.
I was just thinking about something I heard Roy say many years ago. He said, if you want to know if there's a God, try playing him and see how you feel. I can relate to that because, anytime I get caught up in a judgment thing, which judgment really is playing God from my perspective, I often have conflict inside, and quite troubling, in fact, sometimes. So I believe that there's a lot of merit there.
Most of us can identify with playing God in some fashion, whether it's judgment of others or ourself, passing that, boom, you're guilty judgment, or just trying to do everything for everyone, trying to save everyone, trying to play God. It's, he's given us the opportunity. Go ahead, do your best, give it your best shot. And that's what we're doing until we finally come to the point of, this isn't fun. I don't really like this. This isn't bringing me joy. I'm not supposed to be God. I'm supposed to be in awe of him and let him be God.
You just can't help but be aware of why people become movie stars. They want to be worshipped. They make these guys their idols. I don't know how many programs there's these guys reaching out to that person up there singing or trying to touch them, like if they had something to give them. There's nothing, but there's a price.
Interesting. That's, the woman reached out to touch Jesus. We were actually born to worship. So if we don't know the Father, we are going to worship someone on this earth, whether it's a movie star or it could be anyone.
I was watching like bodybuilders on YouTube, and these massive muscles. It's the same thing. Like, why are they doing it? What is the purpose of so much athletics? I mean, I love athletics, playing sport, etc. But what is the purpose of the extremity of it? It's to draw attention to self, right? Look at me. Look at, like, I'm the strongest man in the world. I can lift half a ton. But what's the point of that? Playing God, yeah, I mean, he's not ruling the universe, but he's having everybody look at him like he is the God. And like actors, I knew an actor and it almost destroyed him. And he got out of it because of that pride thing. It will destroy them in the end if they don't get out of it or do it in a right way, because of the pride thing is such a draw. And people are so needy to look at what they can see with their physical eyes because they don't have the faith to have the faith what they cannot see with their physical eyes. But that's a dilemma.
I kind of wonder, with the advent of television and movies, is where this really exploded. I don't really know, because I've always known TV. What was it like before then? Were people still the same, or was it more just about power over others? But with television and movies, isn't that exactly what Jesus was tempted with? What he showed him the world and said, you can have this, if you just worship me. It's somehow in us, even as from little children watching TV. We want to do what they're doing on TV. We want to be the little actor on there. We want to be the star in the movie. The movie is an amplification of someone. The eye is on that person, and somehow they seem bigger than life, better than us. Everything's perfect. So there's where we strive to get to. It's a great tool of the devil to make everybody strive for that, which is nothing. It's nothing.
But the good also is transferred, can be, but it's like a reflection of society, right? If you have so much evil, most of the movies and stuff are going to reflect that. But then you have a segment that's going to reflect great beauty. Like I saw Roy on TV from his old 90s, and was, wow, that's the good of it.
Well, absolutely. Everything can be used for good or evil, even the internet, which is a portal. You can draw good from there, and you can draw evil from it. And I think there's movies that have blessed people, movies about Christ, movies about many things that have blessed people. But the people in charge of the movie industry, it has mainly been a dark force to bring people down, to bring false teachings into the culture of what it really means to be a man or a woman, to be alive today, and what really is important. Culture really has been the religion of the masses.
Sex and outer beauty.
Well, that's right. All of the tenets of that culture, the false idols.
You ask what happened before television. It was just in smaller pockets. The same thing was going on. It was just, there were just smaller groups. But the same thing had been going on since the beginning, I guess. It seemed like that man hadn't been corrupted like before. When you go back and look at people and study the kind of lives that they had, it seems like the people were a little bit more moral, had more ethics than the people of today. People of today seem more lost than the earlier.
At least on the face of it, people accepted certain morals as right or wrong. Whether they lived it, was down to each person. But definitely with mass entertainment, you can influence so many people at once, It's definitely a tool of hypnosis, but I do believe one day it will be used more for the good.
We have to remember that people spent more time with their own families earlier before the Mass. I mean, you could listen to radio in the evening, but most of the time you had to work on the farm or in the city, but then I think that's what happened. We lose that sense of community and family, and then when we move to the city, there's more temptations. That's why they call it the Big Apple.
That's a good one. Interestingly, that is one of the major targets of socialism and communism, is to destroy the family, right? Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Why is the family so important? God made the family. He made the family. And the family today, families are very, very lightly held together, if at all. If at all. And that is how... It just comes back to what I was saying about God creating a family. The family unit has a lot of foundational understanding. What is my trying to say? Yes, it's a unit of strength, of love. And of course, God is love. So he made the family to, reflect that love within each other and then out to their community. So when you break that up, man, everybody's free game. The government becomes the parent and the rule maker. Morals are out. So the destruction of the family is imperative in order to take down a country or God's people, however you want to say it.
Also, the communism wants to destroy the religious faith, the church, any kind of faith that you have, because the faith you have gives you strength to resist the evil. And when you don't have that, when you can't see that, then it's easier for evil to come in and trick you or use you. And
faith in God is usually communicated through the family. Many people, they bring their children up, try to bring them up, teaching them good things. If you go to school, they're going to undo it. So everything is meant to take down the family, which God intended to work through.
Yeah, how many TV programs now do you have a strong father image? There just isn't much. I sometimes say that young children need cowboys because you can always tell who the good cowboy is. He wears the white hat. But you have so many anti-heroes and bad guys in the movies that win, and it didn't used to be that way. It used to be that the good guys always won and the bad guys always lost.
It's crazy. Like they have movies where the bad guy has all this power, and it's like, what's going on here, Because it's the opposite of reality. Even if you end up dying or getting whatever, if you're on the right side, you're good, So you have ultimate power over evil. But, Satan has infiltrated the churches too. So he's tearing down the family, but the families go to church, but he's infiltrated all the churches and has from, most, I don't know about all the churches, but I shouldn't say that. But, Jesus said he came so men wouldn't have to go into buildings to worship, right? You worship in truth and spirit. So he made that a point. So we don't have to go to buildings. It's good. I'm not saying it's good. I mean, I'm glad we gather here, but he's direct. Satan can't get to that unless it's through our intellect.
We are supposed to go to him individually, and then we are supposed to gather, because otherwise, if we just all lived little separate, it doesn't seem right. We're supposed to gather with like-minded people and live a certain way. I can't believe we're supposed to find God and find the truth and then just keep it to ourselves. We're meant to share it, and each one of us blesses others. I've known a lot of people that, have been either severely traumatized or have troubles, and they, just go and live by theirself. And what I realized is that when you cut yourself off from human beings you're actually cutting yourself off from blessings, because God uses human beings to bless you. It always comes through another person, but He also uses you to bless others. So there's a flow of life through humanity that we are supposed to be a part of. And wherever we do gather, whatever church we go to, we have to know in our hearts if something isn't right, then we find a different place to go, because ultimately you serve Him. And if something's not right, you better find a place that does resonate with what's, the truth inside of you.
I was just thinking that, I don't know why, but for some reason after listening to Roy, I got this notion that I was supposed to be completely an island unto myself and be happy if I really had God's light in me. Roy would say, like, for example, I don't need my wife, or I don't need praise from people or whatever. And I think I took it to an extreme where I thought I was doing something very wrong if I went to somebody maybe looking for affection or whatever. I guess in hindsight, I'm looking back at that now, and I think that was probably an unhealthy aspect of how I thought. That, as an older person now, I realize there is something very vital to my survival by interacting with other people, whether I can help or be helped. It doesn't work to be an island unto myself.
Well, we are called the body of Christ. So we want to be part of the body. You have a body, you have heart, you have lungs, you have all these different parts that play their part in the body. And you don't want to cut yourself off from the body, right? I also read one passage in the Bible where Jesus said, I am the vine and you are the branches, and the Father is the gardener. And you have no life separate from me. As if you broke a branch off of a vine, it's going to dry up and wither and die. So we must stay connected to the vine, who is connected to the Father, if we want to have that life. And each one of us, like I said, has our gifts and our part to play in the body. And as we come closer and closer to Him, it will just manifest. You don't even know. You don't even know when you're doing the right thing or helping another person. But as long as you're open and willing, and you truly want to see others succeed and get over their stumbling blocks, if you truly desire that, God will use you to do that.
I know I'd quote Roy a lot, which hopefully is okay in this group here, because he did start this church. I remember a story he told years ago about some pool that people would jump in, and if they jumped in at the right time, after the angels ruffled the water, they would get healed. And there was a guy standing in line hoping to get healed when it was his turn. And he looked at the person or behind him or something like that was far more crippled than he was. And just by having a sense of, I wish this other guy could get a blessing, since he had that thought, he got healed himself. And I think that there's something to that, because I know for myself, I can get very self-absorbed. And I mean, I've got a lot of toys I can play with, and it only goes so far to make me happy. And it gets to a point where like, wow, this is really empty. And sometimes an opportunity comes up where somebody needs help, and it's like, wow, feels like a blessing here, getting outside of myself, and thinking about somebody else's well-being. So, and sometimes I'm forced into that position where I'm thinking, I don't want to be bothered by somebody that comes to my shop, for example. And as soon as I get interacting with them, I'm like, wow, I'm really enjoying this. So
I have experienced that many times. I remember a long time ago, I was dealing with something, and Alan wanted to go to his parents' house. Everybody was going to be there. I really just felt like I don't feel like really being around a lot of people right now. But I went anyway, and I was much better off after I left, just for interacting and not getting sucked into my own drama of whatever I was dealing with. And it's often said, if you're depressed, look for someone else to help. Look for someone else that just getting out of your own stew, which is another part of being alone too much. You're just stewing in your thoughts over and over, and you're not having that interaction and flow with people. So, yeah, sometimes we can get really down in a quicksand of thought, but we just got to move ourselves out and just do something. Go interact with others. And
that was actually the foundation, or one of the foundations of the AA program that's become, I guess, worldwide now, where I think the guy's name was Bob. He discovered that if he'd help another alcoholic, he could get off alcohol. So there's obviously something to that there.
I did come from about, 5 or 6 years. I got into this depression, and I stayed by myself. I would go to work, go home, and on the weekend, I'd sleep most of the weekend. So the devil was getting me isolated, and then he was getting ready to kill me because he was giving me thoughts to take my life, and I had access to, I could get drugs to overdose. But I just sensed that I would be in hell. I didn't do that, but the isolation was something that it grew the depression, and everything just gets worse and worse and worse. But I guess it's what I wanted for 5 years, in a sick kind of way. But maybe I had to go through that 5 years to finally come out and cling to the truth, like no matter what now, because I felt it like really deeply, like I was real close to the edge. God really saved my butt, like, wow, then you could really appreciate small things when you see the depth of hell on earth. And I know I probably just got a little taste of it, but maybe that was necessary for me. It doesn't really matter. It just, things turn around, and, to me, it was a miracle. And it's one of the reasons why I'm kind of tenacious for the truth. Some people say I'm too persistent or whatever at times, and I don't know, God has gifted me with a perception that comes from that deep hell that I was in.
It takes what it takes for each person. It's like I've talked to certain people that have gone through a lot, and they go, I know that I actually needed to go through that. A minute ago I said we have to choose to become a son or a daughter of God. So you could look at it like this. Each one of us, each of our lives is a birthing process. And some pregnancies are tough. Some aren't so bad. Some are horrible. Each of our life, it's almost like a pregnancy that we're going through and when are we going to birth ourselves? It happens when it happens. And it takes what it takes to break whatever it is, whatever stubbornness, whatever blindness, whatever we have in there. Takes a certain amount of time. Fabian, it took that much time for you to go to the next place.
Every day that I prayed and meditated, I was asking God, please give me the wanting. But I'm pretty sure he gave it to me, and I didn't access it, and I wallowed. He already gave it to me, and I just wasn't willing yet to grab for it. So some of it was my own wallowing, I believe.
Wallowing has a strange comfort. There's a strange comfort in wallowing in our woes. It's a strange comfort in the pain. And one day we have to realize, wait a minute, Jesus said he came to change everything. Do I want that more than I want this wallowing? Yeah, I'm willing to let go of the wallowing.
The main thing is no matter how long I wallowed, or the anger was always there. It wasn't going away. I knew I had to, because that was the base core thing, that anger. It was going to get worse,
You're right. Underneath wallowing is usually anger at something. Someone, either yourself or another person. And maybe, I don't know, did you finally see who the anger, where it was directed and understand it? Was it a conscious thing?
It was just a general anger, I don't really remember. Yeah, because I already had spoken to my mom and dad and everything. It was just that irritation of life built up, and it ends up spreading to everything.
I find that irritation is an addiction. If you allow yourself to get irritated at every little thing, you're actually training yourself you find reasons to get irritated. It is an addictive state of mind, just like anger.
It's an energy source. And a lot of conservatives have it, actually, too, and liberals. It's not just on one side.
I heard the phrase, my sister told me, rage looking for reason. And I've caught myself doing it lots of times where I'm thinking, wow, this is actually becoming like a drug that I'm getting off on here. Judging people and hating. And, sometimes I'd know, for example, a friend that hurt me, I realized that, aren't I supposed to be able to forgive him? And I thought, why do I want to forgive him? That's it's doing me some good by hating him, I think, or I need to let him have it. It was confusion. It was confusion because I didn't have the clarity to understand that it was okay not to be his judge. Doesn't mean he gets off easy just because just because I'm not being the judge. I guess there's a fine line, though, between being a doormat and knowing how to stand up for yourself. And I had a situation recently. An old friend came by that hurt me a long time ago, and I kind of secretly judged him. And I thought, I don't think I have to judge him anymore. He did apologize. I didn't think his apology was sincere as I'd hoped, but I mean, he did the best he knew how. And I thought, maybe I've got a problem here, but I noticed there was maybe a bad side of me that wanted to keep on holding on to it. Some days are better than others, but I've always wondered that about myself. What was that side of myself that got some thrill out of hating?
Spirit of anger is another thing that it sort of has a good feeling to it, a good bad feeling. And we have to be willing to give it up and say, you know what, God, you do the judging. Now, there are times when somebody hurts you or betrays you where it's important to just speak the truth to them. And sometimes that's why we can't get over it, because we are supposed to say something to that person. We're supposed to give them the opportunity to make it right. And either they will or they won't. But your job, our job, is to shine a little light. Sometimes they didn't even know they hurt you. And sometimes it works out really good. And sometimes the person makes excuses and whatever, and you say, well, I just want you to think about, what I said. You've given yourself your voice. You haven't denied your voice. There's something so empowering about just speaking, whatever happens, speaking the truth, not with any kind of demand. It's actually an offering. You're actually offering the truth. And you know what? Maybe you're not 100% right. You're offering a truthful exchange so that both people can learn something and grow. And that's the importance of speaking the truth. It's an offering, because what are we mostly speaking? We're not speaking, or we're skirting everything. And God wants us to embrace the truth and flow with His love and bring His truth to the earth. He's not going to come down here, this is what it is. He's using us. Our voices are the way that He speaks the truth on the earth.
That is to worship Him in truth, right? In truth and spirit. So you get to know Him more the more you speak it. And also it separates you from the approval of the world.
That's true. David Masters played a clip of Jordan Peterson, who has just an enormous following. He's a brilliant guy. I've heard him over the years. I've never heard anybody who's so good at articulating ideas and truth. But when I heard him years ago, I thought, wow, that's really good. But his undertone, I felt like, I don't think he really knows God yet. I could feel like an underlying of depression or cynicism, maybe not cynicism, but just disappointment in life. That's what it was. Disappointment, even though he was speaking the truth. But he's gone through a lot. He almost died. And apparently he did a 4-hour interview with Joe Rogan. I'm probably going to look at that. But David played this clip of Jordan Peterson talking about the truth. And he got emotional, and he just got quiet for a minute. And I saw he was talking about Jesus and the reality that he could actually be. And I thought, this is so interesting, because I know the man loves the truth. He's always wanted to speak the truth. And I said, I said to David, the man loves the truth. And if you love the truth, you're eventually going to run into Jesus because He is the truth. He's the truth and the way and the life. So it's very interesting. If you love the truth, stick with that and speak it.
I've been doing a lot of thinking about my life, and I'm 75, and I'm looking back, and I see people I've known, and I've known some of you a long time. The plan that God has for us when we're a kid, and each decade that comes along, you do a lot of stupid things, and you never get over it. You stay stupid your whole life to varying degrees, but each decade gives you a gift. It's a knowing, it's whatever bits of wisdom that you've been able to glean from the world and from the Lord. And people who have these parties, you know, when you turn 30, then they call you old, then the big 4-0 and the big 5-0 and the big 6-0. And it's really, for me, in the 70s, life is just so great. Our kids are grown, they're good kids. We don't have any problems. And I'm just so thankful to God for that. That's about it.
As I was saying earlier, each one of our lives is almost like a pregnancy of a child of God to really become his child. And I think that a lot of the choices we make when we're young, we have a conscience. We do have a conscience. And if we yield to that conscience, that birthing process is going to be a lot less horrifying. But the more we yield and choose darkness, we're going to have a harder pregnancy and labor. That's just the way it is. Doesn't mean it won't turn out okay. Just means, okay, there's lessons here. You're going to have to, all these choices have consequences. All these choices enslave you to what you chose. So coming out of all that, it's going to be different for each person. And the person, obviously, that makes a lot of bad choices and has a lot of suffering also has that much more joy when they are forgiven. So everything works together for the good of those that love the Lord. Everybody's life is a parable. Every single person's life is a parable and has things you can learn from it.
I think that's a good way to put it, as a parable, because everything in nature, I think there's so many things that nature tries to tell us about human nature. And if you have ever had a garden and trying to raise plants or seen things, it gives you a little bit of insight into how God must feel as he watches us grow. Yeah, he's the gardener. Yeah, if you've ever, tried to do simple things like prune a tree or try to graft a tree, trees are really amazing things, I think. Jesus uses them, God uses them in the Bible and mentions them. There's just so many different ways that God tries to communicate with you and teach you these many different pearls of wisdom. Somehow there's a truth in you that is able to hear and see other truths. And this part of God that you have inside of you testifies to the truth when you see it happen before you.
We each have the spark of truth in us, and we also have the spark of rebellion. I shouldn't even call that a spark. We have the spirit of rebellion and the spark of truth within every person. That's why we navigate through this life. Which one are we listening? Did we listen to our conscience that time, or did we yield to the rebellion? And that's the journey of this life. You talked about how God talks about trees a lot, and he talks about grafting people into the family or into the Jewish family, right? It's a family tree. It's the family tree. There we are back again at the family. God is growing a family. That's what he's doing. And he's pruning and he's throwing into the fire the ones that are dried up and broken. Each one of us has the choice to become part of that family tree.
I was just thinking about something you said about having a choice. I think for a lot of people, they don't realize they have a choice because they're so engulfed in the sin that's taking them down. I can speak from my own experience that a lot of times I didn't realize that giving myself over to a particular sin, maybe I don't have to be specific, would dull my mind into where I wouldn't see other opportunities. But I mean, it could be something as simple as overstuffing yourself to where your brain is dulled down, or sensuality, porn. And I was just thinking that, a lot of people maybe that have it too easy, that aren't experiencing any hardship, always have a drug available, an antidepressant or whatever. I wonder if it blocks them from the light, from a higher potential. And I was just thinking of a scripture in the Bible, I don't remember, it was Old Testament or New Testament, where I guess it's supposed to be God speaking. He's talking to the people and he says, you don't need me, you've had your drink, or something like that. But I mean, it kind of made sense to me that maybe, all the comforts we have, the television, the internet, if used improperly, like you were saying, they can be so fulfilling in a wrong way. It just leads to greater emptiness. I mean, that's been my experiences. I've fallen in a lot of things I'm not especially proud about, but I realize that I have to seek outside of that comfort, try to deny myself that easy way out, and see if there isn't something deeper I can tap into. And that's why I like to come here. This isn't exactly the most comfortable thing in the world, but at the same time, I'm willing to expose myself a little bit, and in the hope that I'll see a little deeper into my soul. So anyway, I appreciate the group here because of that.
It's strange how sin can have an idea, like if you have an addiction and it'll give you an idea, and then when you partake in that sin, it's like before you do it, it's looking forward to it. It almost seems like everything's going to be okay. It's like the thing. But then after it's done, then you feel rotten again, So that's the lure, and then it gets more of a hold of you, of your soul, that demon. It gets more. I mean, my advice to people from experience, the sooner you start to wake up and stand back from sin, the better, because it creates a vortex of darkness and it pulls you in, and it's harder to break that vortex of darkness.
Each choice to go into the darkness, even small ones, each one chains you a little bit more. It gives the darkness a little bit more hold on you, and a little bit more. That's why at some point, it owns you. And then it's like, do I even have the choice anymore? It's working through me. And that's a soul in bondage. But Jesus came to free the souls in bondage because he knew men would get himself to that point. But he just said, come to me. I will break those chains. All right. Well, I thank you all for coming today. Just want you all to remember that God wanted a family. And he's growing a family. And each one of us is someone that he's looking forward to returning to him. Again, I thank you, and we will see you all next week. Thank you for supporting the foundation.